Welcome to our August 6th council meeting. Can we call the meeting to order and have the roll?
Councilmember Evans.
Present.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Randolph.
Here.
Mayor Millman.
Here.
Councilmember Best-Campbell.
Present.
Councilmember Arndt.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Here.
All present, counted for. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda, order, and content?
Yep, I move to accept the agenda in order and content.
I have a second. I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Point of order, I think we need to take voice votes.
Oh, I'm sorry, you caught me right off the bat. Since we have virtual participation, we got to have roll call votes on everything. So can we have the roll?
Councilmember Evans.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Councilmember Best-Campbell.
Yes.
Mayor Millman.
Yes.
Councilmember Arndt.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Randolph.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. No special presentations. We have public comments. So for anybody on the screen, you probably can't see, we have a packed house. We had to bring out extra seats. We have quite a few people signed up, and we have some virtual, and some of the topics are repetitive. Doesn't mean they're bad, they're just repeating. So we have a rule of 15 minutes of public comments. So if there is somebody, for example, we have zoning, rezone mentioned several times. If you have somebody that you want to appoint for a spokesperson, 2 or 3, that might speed things up. We have a couple other comments that people want to speak to. So, but barring council's waiving the rule, we have 15-minute timeline. So if you guys, while we're talking, want to get organized and have a certain number of people speak, that would be acceptable, but we do have a 15-minute limit. So
I would like to move that we extend the public comment period. Since we have so many people who are in attendance, I think it's only fair that we allow them to speak to us.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. As a maker of motion, you have the floor.
It's rare that we have anybody in the audience, much less packed house with extra seats, and we owe it to the community, especially with one meeting this month, to hear it out and listen to everything that people have to say. That's our job, to sit here and listen. So I think that we should sit as long as it takes and listen to whatever it is that people have to say to us.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Evans.
No.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Councilmember Best-Campbell.
Yes.
Mayor Millman.
Aye.
Councilmember Arndt.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Randolph.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, so let's try to go through this. First up, when I call your name, please come to the microphone, state your name and whether you live in the city limits. First up, and you'll have 3 minutes, and there's a timer up here. Matthew Suarez.
Good afternoon, and thank you to our elected officials and our community at large for their time today. Certainly appreciate it. As a Woodinville resident and business owner, I feel compelled to speak to the rezoning of Old Town. With all the formalities and legalese and procedural elements underway, it's an imperative that we clarify what is being proposed in simple terms and the impact these decisions have on our beloved town's residents, small businesses, and in fact, the soul of our community at large. If we look around us, change is happening. Change is hard, but at times a necessity for the greater good. However, I implore the council to consider what long-term detriments are at stake in exchange for shiny short-term gains. In essence, this rezoning is a targeted disruption of a dozen family-owned businesses who have been pillars of the community for decades and counting. There was no notification by those directly affected that there were confidential and unbroadcasted votes and discussions underway that impact the livelihoods of the small business owners, their families, and the residents and visitors alike who have patronized their establishments over the years to celebrate momentous life occasions. Whether it be honoring the women of our lives over Mother's Day brunch, or bringing the kids joy with ice cream on a summer day, or picking a fresh bouquet of flowers for our loved one's anniversary, all of the businesses affected are minority-owned, which unfortunately directly calls into question if there's a prejudice motive at play. In closing, we'd like to propose 3 questions to our elected officials and the community at large. What becomes of our vibrant community when all the character and charm that makes Woodinville is replaced by cookie-cutter buildings and corporate businesses? Where's the respect and common decency for these small businesses who have provided a cornerstone for our community to help Woodinville become what it is today? Last but not least, who stands to truly gain in the long run from this situation when all of this development is being done single-handedly by one corporation, Mainstream Property Group? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Julie Ortiz.
Thank you. My name is Julie Ortiz. My husband and I, Julio, moved from the East Coast to Woodinville over 20 years ago now to raise our family, and we've been successfully running the Twisted Cuban Cafe for over the last 15 years in Old Town Woodinville. I chose to speak tonight because I wanted to put a face to the people of Old Town and to the businesses of Old Town. I want you to know we are people. We're not a corporation. I want you to know we are people who depend on the income that we generate from Old Town, from our businesses. It's how I feed my kids. It's how I pay my mortgage. It's how I pay city taxes. We need that business. And I want you to know that if you vote to rezone, it will have a negative impact on my family's income, as well as many others who have businesses in that location. I'm disappointed in my city council members because they did not alert me to the fact of the potential zoning. I actually had to learn it from a customer. You haven't come over to speak to me. You haven't spoken to my husband. You haven't spoken to other business owners. And I think that's an essential part of your role as a city council member. Now, you might be sitting there thinking and saying to yourselves, oh, what is she going on about? They can just pick up, go and relocate their restaurant easily. There's a lot of new locations in Woodinville that are available. It's super easy. Well, it's not that easy. I ask, are you going to pick up the extra costs that we have to incur for that move? Are you going to pay for the relocation fees, the tear down, the build up for us to move over there? No, you're not. Are you going to pay the advertising costs that we incur because we have to advertise to our customers that we've moved and that we haven't gone out of business? No, you're not. Are you going to pay the higher rent fees that we have to pay every month because we had to move? And the rent fees they're $5,000 to $10,000 a month for the next 10 years. I urge you to stop and think. Look at Old Town as it exists today and the people who have been doing business there for 10, 15 plus years. Stop and ask yourselves how you can help Old Town businesses thrive. How you can encourage more Woodinville residents to open businesses. Small businesses make Woodinville unique, and they're culturally vibrant. Think of us as the international district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ryan Ortiz.
Hello, my name is Ryan Ortiz. I am a resident of Woodinville. And I just want to thank everybody for attending today and the community at large for coming together to support all the businesses that are being affected. As a business owner, resident, and alumni of Woodin Elementary, Leota Junior High, and Woodinville High School, I've been here for over 20 years and have grown up watching this beautiful community flourish into what it has become today. I want to see this community grow and progress in a positive manner for the future because I, as many people, want to live in a positive community that strives to be the best, as well as keeps its business owners and residents as happy as possible, because that is what I want in my future. A stable, reasonable, respectful, and happy place for my business and all other businesses and home, which is what the City Council and all of its previous placeholders has done for me and my family for over the 20 years that we have been here. I'm not here to say you're doing your jobs wrong. I, in fact, commend you for trying to help and to continue the growth of Woodinville. But that does not mean I find all of your choices in the best interest of Woodinville and the people who make it and have made it what it is today. The new rezoning acts are now trying to remove my family's restaurant, as well as dozens of other businesses from Old Town Woodinville, trying to remove what has made Woodinville into what it has become today. I, as many others, do not see that as okay. We have been a standing business now for over 15 years, including the extremely rough 4 years of COVID-19, and now still trying to recuperate. These rezoning acts were brought to our attention not by the city, not by the council, not by the paper, but by a customer. Last minute, almost no time to respond. How do you think this makes us feel? We feel abandoned, disrespected, and mistreated. We have brought nothing but positive things into this community, and now you're trying to toss us out with what would have been little to no warning. The last thing I'd like to bring to the attention is that Old Town Woodinville is a high-density minority area, and with this rezoning, it would be detrimental to the diversity of all of Woodinville and the community it holds. Please take these words into deep and serious consideration when you are all voting for this act. Thank you all.
Thank you. Councilmember Arndt, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor Millman. I just wanted to clarify that tonight we are not discussing rezoning of any part of Old Town. I am very cognizant of our business owners who are there in the room and who are passionate about this. And I've already heard from a few people who are very upset about not being notified. And I just wanted to clarify that we are in fact not discussing rezoning that part of our city.
Thank you. Next up, Julio Ortiz.
Hi, my name is Julio Ortiz, and obviously now that I heard what you just said, well, if you're not discussing the rezoning, but you can see the amount of people that you work for, and they're standing right here filling up this room, I think you should change your agenda and pay attention to what people care about in your community. It's very nice to come in and write all these things here and there, and you know what? My English is not very good looking. I'm straightforward. When I pay my taxes, I pay my taxes. When you guys get paid for your jobs, I pay that. Whatever I have to do for this community, I do that. So now we're asking just for our rights. Please do not sell Woodinville. Please do not take the soul out of Woodinville. Woodinville is not the same anymore. This is looking like Redmond. This is a parking lot going on. I haven't been able to cross the city for the past 2 months. There is not an infrastructure that could direct us from one side or the other one. It's all about buildings. It's all about doing. Sometimes I wonder if someone is just getting paid under the table here to build all of this because it's a nonsense. I was born and raised in Cuba with the communism. I lived it for 23, 24 years, and I know what mafia smells like. And I'm not trying to accuse nobody, but it smells like something that's not very good. And I'm not accusing nobody, but please, Let's take this seriously. Look how many people. I'm pretty sure you guys haven't had this room packed with so many people before here in Woodinville. These people are the ones that you work for. These people are the ones that work really hard day by day, paying their taxes, trying to keep up with the competitions, trying to keep up with COVID. I'm still trying to pay my COVID debt. The other part of it is that we have a planning commission here in the city. They're capable enough to analyze, understand, and organize any situation on the planning on this city. The planning commission said no to it. So why are we questioning the planning commission decision and bring it up to city council to decide something that it was already decided? Please, I want answers today. If it wasn't today that you weren't going to talk about rezoning, it is today. It is today because we're here right now. And I want you to know that we need answers today. Please vote. Please make a decision and let's kill this or kill us. Either way. So we need our answers today. Woodinville is not for sale. Woodinville is not yours. Woodinville is us. All of this representation of us, and that's the reason why we dressed up, most of us in white, to represent that we mean good, that we are the structure of Woodinville. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I would like to clarify something. So the property that we're discussing or is being discussed tonight currently has a development agreement for 161 apartment units. That was done in 2019. There is a proposal by a developer to do townhomes. We are not voting on that tonight, but in planning, the normal order of this, the way it works is planning makes a recommendation to council and then we take it up or we decide not to take it up. So I just want that clarification because right now on the development agreement, there's a 107-story, 161 apartment unit that could be developed tomorrow, and that was done in 2019 in a development agreement at that time, and so just want that known out there. So thank you, Dane Stevenson.
That's a tough one to follow there, my brother. Woo! Hello, council. Thank you for hearing everybody out tonight. I am a resident. I moved here in 1990. Does anybody know what the slogan was back then? Nobody? What was it? It was horse country. It was country living, city style. What that meant to me was a great blend, and we chose Woodinville for one simple reason. It didn't look like Redmond, didn't look like Kirkland, sure as heck didn't look like Bellevue. That's the nice thing about Woodinville is we bring a lot of people together in a very nice, beautiful, but small space. Bothell had a slogan, I think theirs was for a day or a lifetime. So you could either move there or go to jail there, either way, day or a lifetime. They don't use that slogan anymore, and obviously we don't either. But you wanna see the hardest working family I've ever met in my life? The Ortiz family. And I know you're not gonna talk and brag about yourself, but I'll tell you what, we need more of this. We need more small business, more specialty business. We can't handle a Chick-fil-A on every corner, and we sure cannot handle the same looking apartments down every single road. So I guess the point of my story is let's not look like Redmond. Has anybody driven to Redmond lately? Anybody? Yeah. It is not good. Now, I am all about change and growth, but I think the key word is you gotta know when to say when. And at this point, we rely on you to make those good decisions. Still a good looking town, still draws people in, but I'll tell you what, that balance act is right here in front of us. So thank you again for taking the time. Thank you for chiming in virtually, and thank everybody on the council for taking the time to support the community. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Alex Campbell.
Good evening, Alex Campbell. I live in the city limits. I'm going to take a slightly different matter in terms of correction. Councilmember Arndt and Mr. Millman are completely wrong. The agenda item number 7 tonight, discussion of allowing ground floor residential dwellings and below to face public streets in Old Town. Nothing in that agenda item says one parcel. In fact, that would be an illegal spot zoning. Every proposal in that agenda item talks about at least Julio's and that stretch of Old Town that leads to the piece of property you're talking about. I'm really quite frustrated when someone would come on to our meeting and lie to the crowd like this. Look, the downtown, including Old Town, is zoned for first floor residential and up to 56 feet above that. That's been that way for a decade. And that was done to create a community. People live upstairs, they come downstairs to the businesses. That's what Old Town is right now. That's what that DA is, yes. And that's totally legal. And that could go anywhere in this city. But there would always be some business. What you're proposing is to take away the requirement for business. And that's really great for the developers. They make a lot of money on apartments. And I do say apartments because it won't be townhomes. Nothing in the ordinance that's on this agenda says townhomes. It says residential, rental, or sold. That means the developer will build exactly as much as they can get away with. And we've already seen that this council, with Wooden Creek, claims that, oh, well, we passed the ordinance, we have to pass the DA. You did that and made sure to ask for 0, even though they got more units. You say affordable, but the units that you're talking about, the requirements that are proposed, just say below market rate. That's not affordable. That might be a tiny fraction of a dollar under whatever they can claim is market rate. It's not a defined term. And finally, you say you'll probably talk about affordability. The current proposal is 10%, or if it was townhomes, 4 units. Our city needs 1,800 to meet our growth targets. But you already know that's being addressed by the entirety of general business zone that you're about to put 8,000 units into. So don't try and sell this crowd a ball of whatever. This is on the agenda tonight, and everyone here should stay to watch how you vote.
A point of clarification, this has not had a public hearing. We would not be allowed to vote on that. It's a decision on whether we want to go to a public hearing on.
Point of order, I don't think it's appropriate to argue with the public commenters. Let's let them speak their minds.
By council rules, I can clarify, and we were accused of not doing something, and by law, we have to have a public hearing on it, which it has not had a public hearing. So we would be unable to vote on this tonight.
If we're doing points of clarification, I would like to clarify there are 2 motions that are presented in the agenda item to approve the amendment as presented to council.
Cindy Giancondi? Did I get that right? No. Sorry.
All right. I'm not really here to talk about the zoning stuff. It's more of a personal thing for me. So I don't know how all this works, but I agree that the city needs to do something to keep our streets moving and our small business people employed. I've lived here for over 40 years, and I have just found out that there is a 110-foot right-of-way in front of my house. I've had carports there, and I was told that I was in violation because I had a permanent, which it was not permanent, it was a temporary structure. It's been sitting there for 20 years. I can't figure out why there's a 110-foot right-of-way in front of my house. There's a driveway, there's a little alcove where I park my truck, and I was told I had to take this down, remove it before the city would even talk to me about vacating the right-of-way or doing an encroachment deal or anything like that. So, I've had to hire a lawyer. I've been dealing with the city over this, and a tree, the thing that started it was a tree twice, fell down and destroyed one of the carports. And I didn't know was it my neighbor's tree, the city's tree? So the city's taken responsibility for that, but they still haven't come and taken the tree down. It just keeps sloughing off its limbs. So after doing all of this and spending a bunch of money, I had my violation dealt with because I took the last standing structure down. But and then I was told that, well, as far as vacating that 110, I will, the city is not interested in doing that because they want to put sidewalks there. Well, I butt right up to Snohomish County. We've had developers in there, they've got sidewalks across the street, they've got them up into right where my property starts, but not in front of my house. And I don't know what the point, they'll never put sidewalks there in my lifetime. I mean, I know that, I think the city knows that, but I don't know what direction to go with the city trying to get this 110-foot right-of-way vacated. It's extremely big, and it's only in front of my house. Originally, it was going to be where 522 was going to be built, but, you know, they put it somewhere else. So it's just been sitting there for, you know, the 40 years. My house was built in '68. But it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, I think they should be able to vacate part of it so that at least I can feel safe that I have my property there. The city says they can come in there and they can put it right up to my garage door. I mean, that's how big it is. It's just kind of ridiculous. But anyway, I just wanted to say my piece, and I'm going to try to make a letter and send it to each and every one of you guys so you can see my quandary. But anyway, let's do a better job for our small business owners. Woodinville has turned into something I don't even recognize anymore, and it's kind of sad.
Thank you.
Okay,
You can, just to save yourself some time,
Pardon?
there's a link on the website that will go to all city council rather than having to write 7 different ones or paste and cut and paste.
Person, thank you.
Yep. Carrie Scarborough.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Carrie Scarborough. I'm a long-term resident of Woodinville. I am speaking tonight in support of Sharon Peterson for the position of the Planning Commission. I have known Sharon for 20 years. She and I have served on panels together, but have also walked our neighborhood weekly for years. I know her to be articulate and organized. She has much experience collaborating with a variety of people. She comes to meetings prepared and with pertinent questions and insights. She is used to working through complex issues and coming up with insightful answers. At this point, she is also personally able to spend more time preparing and considering the issues put before the commission previously. Sharon has great interest in the well-being of Woodinville and its citizens. Indeed, she applied for this position once before, but was not chosen. She is demonstrating her commitment tonight by coming before you again with the hope of serving her community. I believe she will do an outstanding job, and I cannot overstate my support for her in this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosa Antoine.
Rosa Antoine. I live in Woodinville. I had no idea that there was anything so exciting happening tonight. I was only going to give you a little capsule review of the rental situation that I've existed in. And so last year, about the beginning of July, I was paying $16.95 for my 2-bedroom apartment. Then some new people bought it, started sprucing it all up, and wanted all of us to leave. That was painful. Well, then they changed their mind and decided that some of us who hadn't moved out yet, there was quite an exodus. They said, okay, you can stay. Then I was offered to move into another apartment that had been partially renovated. And they also had put in a backyard, nice fenced-in backyard. Okay, at that point, my rent had gone up $300 a month. And then, as July approached, I found out that they were going to want another $300 a month for the same place. So I went begging. I got $100 knocked off of it, and somehow or other I am managing. But other people didn't have it so lucky. So there's something that needs to be addressed there too, I think. I hear what the owners are saying about their little businesses, and I think maybe we need better communication between you all and us all about a lot of things, because people get kind of wrong impressions about what's going on. Lastly, I will just say I came from San Jose, California. San Jose was a country town, and they had a fella who was really good at buying up areas, and San Jose went from being, maybe about 80,000 people. It's over 1 million now. So yes, that is what happens in real life. And I've been looking around and seeing the things happening here, and I think, am I going to watch another San Jose? I don't know. I hope that you guys can keep the nice atmosphere of this town. However, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Antoine, I just wanted to let you know we are taking up renter protections in an upcoming meeting. I don't remember the exact date, but keep your eye on the agenda on our website. Second meeting of September, I'm told. Martha, and I'm sorry I can't read the last name. Sorry, Martha? If you can state your name and whether you live in city limits, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Martha. My last name is Gutron. I just come in to support the small business here. I'm a small business owner too, and I'm a customer here in Woodinville. And we use Woodinville for the last 30 years probably. I just moving from California. And all the business here, all the food they has here, we use it because we provide service too. So when we come in to our way to work, we need to stop to get some food. I live in the Gold Bar area, and sometimes the traffic, they take me 2 hours to come to here. I work here in Woodinville, I work in Bothell, and I work in Kirkland, so every day I come in this area. And we stop by, I'm a customer about Hollywood restaurants, we stop by there, my employees and I. So I just want you guys consider, a small business, they need to support us too, because the way they say it, we pay taxes too. So, and we use the same money, a small business and a big business, we pay same taxes or we use the same money. So I wanna you guys consider all small business also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I understand we have one virtual, somebody signed up for virtual comment. Terry, do we know? Do we have a name on that?
I believe it's Shengquan Lin.
Shengquan Liang?
Yes. Thank you. My name is Shengquan Liang, and I'm a resident of Woodinville. I came here to comment today because I want to voice my strong objection to the proposal for ground floor residential dwelling facing public streets in the Old Town. This plan potentially will threaten the livelihood of local small businesses, which are not only a significant source of tax revenue for our city, but also form the backbone of a community's unique character and economic vitality. Allowing residential dwellings at a street level could significantly diminish the foot traffic and also consumer patronage, leading to a decline in the business prosperity. Not only that, it is essential to prioritize the interest of current residents to rely on those businesses for goods, services, and employment, and ensuring that the Old Town remains a vibrant and a thriving community. Preserving our commercial spaces also supports the diversity of our neighborhoods, as pointed out by many of the previous commentators earlier in the session. And this will foster a mix of cultures and traditions that enrich our community and attracts more visitors and further boosting our local economy. Thank you for consideration. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. That's all we have. We also got some written comments, so if council hasn't taken a look at those, please look at those at your leisure. Appreciate everybody's participation. Do I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to accept the consent calendar as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Evans?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Aye.
Councilmember Best-Campbell?
Yes.
Mayor Millman?
Aye.
Councilmember Arndt?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Randolph?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to our first business item.
Mr. Mayor, I might suggest we amend the agenda if the council sees fit to bring item number 7 up, because we have a crowd here that instead of making them sit through an hour of interviews.
It's a great idea. Why don't we entertain a motion to move business item number 7 to business item 6 and just flip-flop them?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilmember Evans?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Aye.
Councilmember Best-Campbell?
Yes.
Mayor Millman?
Yes.
Councilmember Arndt?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Randolph?
Aye.
Motion carries. First business item will now be former business item number 7, now business item number 6, discussion on allowing ground floor residential dwellings and below face public streets in Old Town. Mr. Grumbaugh.
All right, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Let my PowerPoint come on up here. All right, as discussed, this is a discussion regarding ground floor residential dwellings in the Central Business District Zone. Just a little bit of background. This started out with Main Street making a request a few months back about a change to the zoning code to allow for ground floor residential dwelling units facing public streets in the Central Business District Zone to be extended to include the Old Town. And I'll talk a little bit more in some later slides here, a little bit about the history of residential and how residential is currently allowed facing public streets in the CBD zone and some of the other parts of the CBD zone. So what kind of prompted this was Main Streets had an interest in building townhomes on a property in Old Town that is currently owned by West Point Properties. City Council discussed Main Street's application at their May 21st meeting and placed and voted to place the request on the Planning Commission's 2024 work plan. So the Planning Commission took this up at their July 10th and July 24th meeting, and they had some discussions, went through some alternatives and stuff. And then at the July 24th meeting, a majority of the commissioners that were present voted not to make a change to the Central Business District Zone. They expressed concerns regarding displacement of existing businesses and concerns with losing commercial land to residential-only types of development. So that's basically kind of what led to tonight. So we brought the Planning Commission recommendation to you tonight to determine what to do as far as going forward with this. So I'll go a little bit, even though this is not technically part of the code amendment, but it is kind of the background that went into the code amendment. So I'll talk real quick here about Main Street's proposal. So they have been inquiring, as I mentioned, to develop the properties that are owned by West Point Properties at 12461 Northeast Woodinville Drive. And what they've been proposing to do is build up to about 44 townhomes. 4 of these would be below the market rates to be determined through a development agreement should an ordinance go through. And then they would also include 1,000 square feet of corner neighborhood retail and food service. And so this was in your packet from when we discussed this back in May. This kind of shows the layout of it. And this was kind of what they were looking at proposing design. Now, I always note that the design you'll see here has not been reviewed for compliance with our zoning regulations. I'm not sure what you currently see there actually would comply, but this was just kind of some of the concepts that they wanted to kind of share initially what it might look like. So, as I think was noted earlier, there is currently a development agreement on this property. West Point Properties came in back in 2019 and got a development agreement and was looking to develop the property with 161 multifamily dwellings and up to 24,253 square feet of new commercial space and 230 parking stalls. And so this was a drawing of what they were proposing the project to look like. West Point has been trying to sell the project to see if somebody wants to build it, and to this point has been unsuccessful in being able to get any takers, any developers to build the project. Yeah.
Robert, how much longer, how many more years are left on that DA? Do we know?
About, well, 2019 it was a 10-year DA, so they've got
5 more years.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, so just a little bit real quick about Old Town. Most of you, I believe, are familiar with the Old Town neighborhood where it's located. But just a little bit of summary of the information. It consists of 29 parcels, about 6.5 acres. One of the things that's kind of unique about this area is that most of the lots here are small in terms of their depth of them is fairly shallow. And this is kind of a result because this was one of our earliest plats. It was done back in 1890. And so I kind of show you, this is actually from the plat that was recorded back in 1890, how the lots were originally laid out. And then, of course, the other map above shows you the zoning where Old Town is located within the city. So a little bit about the history about residential in the CBD zone. So up until 2010, ground floor residential was permitted in the Central Business District zone without any restrictions. This was modified in 2010 by Ordinance 489, which was part of a sub-area planning for our downtown Little Bear Creek corridor area. And at that time, the council at that time adopted a prohibition of ground floor residential dwellings in the CBD zone to abut public streets. Now, they can abut private streets, and they can also be interior to these developments, but they just couldn't be abutting along the public streets. So a couple of years after that, though, got adopted, council decided that they were going to loosen these restrictions a little bit, and they adopted Ordinance 524, where they were going to allow, along some public streets, they would allow residential dwellings to be facing on those. And most of this is in the pedestrian core design district, which you can kind of see it's in the yellow here. This is the pet core area, as we often refer to it. And this is where the vast majority, it was on the public streets in here, where they had the vast majority allowances for dwelling units to be able to be facing towards some of the public streets down there. This was then, again, 8 years later in 2020, we did a further amendment. This was at a time when we were looking about active uses being along our street fronts, and there was some modifications done to this residential on the ground floor, including there was now a new requirement for a development agreement. Previously, it was just basically an as-right to be able to do these along some of the public streets there, and then when the code got amended in 2020, an additional provision was to add a development agreement, which means basically it's not an as-right. It can only be done through if the council is to approve of a particular project that would have the residential development on the road. So what it does is it kind of lets council take a look at properties on a case-by-case basis as to whether they would think that it does seem appropriate to allow residential on that property. And if they said no to it, then basically the restriction about no commercial would, no residential dwellings on the ground floor would remain in place. So this is what that was kind of the background. So this is what the current code looks like. So this is, it's in WMC 2142040. This is where we talk about where it's prohibiting residential dwellings on ground floors and buildings facing the public streets in the central business district. And as I noted in my previous slide, you can kind of see here where you have the blue and the green. The green is the area where we would allow residential facing on these public streets with a development agreement. So this is one of the exceptions on this prohibition. The other part of this is if you have on the ground floor, if that building with residential dwellings in it has at least 30 feet of commercial space between that and the street, then that can be on the ground floor as well. But as I mentioned, there would be a separation, or it needs to be per this map. And what this proposal here would be basically would be modifying these provisions. So this is in your packet. I'm going to show two parts to the slide because the first part here is actually just housekeeping. This is mostly just cleaning up some of the language to make it a little bit clearer, to talk about the ground floor and below. That basically reflects our current code. So that's the first piece of this. And then the other part of this, which is more consistent with what Main Street was requesting. This is what it would look like, or potentially look like, if the council wanted to move forward with a text amendment to change where we would allow the dwelling units. Again, note the development agreement and note where the area, as far as Old Town, is about where this would be allowed. There is a provision in here that talks about at least 10% of the total dwelling units. Again, if council wants to move forward with this and wants to think of this differently, that's all part of what can be considered. But we also have, in addition, it's not just the affordable dwelling units, but also if there's other benefits council wanted to require before allowing this residential on the public streets, then that would also be able to be part of that discussion with the development agreement as well. So that's kind of a summary of the code amendment. So what you have in front of you tonight are some alternatives for consideration. If the council is interested in further consideration of the proposal, I'll note that this is not a decision whether to say yes or no to this proposal. What it is basically is that you would just be directing staff to set up a public hearing, because as noted earlier, a public hearing would be required before a final action can be taken on this. So one of the possibilities is go ahead and any changes you may want to make to this and direct that to a public hearing and then set that for a future council meeting. Another option would be that you could have us, if council wants to move forward with this, is go ahead and settle on what you want the proposal to look like, then send it back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and then have a recommendation come out of that public hearing. Or if there is no interest in further consideration of the proposal, then you can motion to deny the requested code amendment. Or if you decide to take no action, that has the same effect as denying the request for the code amendment. So I'm happy to answer any questions. These were, if you wanted to move forward with this, you're not necessarily required. You can do it by consensus with direction to staff, or if you wanted to make it more formal, you could take an action with a motion. And as I noted again here, none of these motions would approve the code amendment. It only moves the proposal forward for further consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. So just going through everything that was in the packet, do we really need a code amendment, or can we do a development agreement for the revised option?
If you want to be able to have dwelling units on the ground floor facing public streets, you will need a text amendment to be able to do that.
Okay, so right now, I still am shocked that the former council approved a 7-story building there. The roads, everything around it cannot support that. And we have no ability to make that infrastructure bigger because it goes right into State Route 202, which is owned by the state, not by the city. So I am just shocked that this went into and was approved by former councils. So the only options that we have to keep that monstrosity, because we have no other 7-story buildings in this city, the only other option we have is to rezone this. There's nothing else that we can do.
It's not technically a rezone. What it is, it's a text amendment where you're just basically expanding. So a rezone usually means you're actually changing the zoning underneath it, and so like you would be creating something new underneath it. This is basically what they call a text amendment that would just be expanding the allowance which is allowed in other parts of the central business district.
And so can that expansion be only allowed through a development agreement?
the way this is currently proposed, that they would only be able, any developer on any of these properties would only be allowed to do that if council was to approve a development agreement, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Best-Campbell.
I move to reject the requested amendment of section 21.42.020 to change residential units in Old Town.
Do I see a second? Motion fails due to lack of a second.
I second.
Okay.
I think it needs to be discussed.
Are you, are you not, it's my understanding you were recusing yourself on this issue. Is that not the case?
I think a thorough discussion is warranted, so
So you will not be recusing yourself?
I'm not saying.
Well, if you're going to recuse yourself, you cannot weigh in, discuss, anything else. So we need
I'm
to know.
only saying I think a thorough discussion should take place for everyone.
But what I'm saying, Councilmember Taylor, if you are going to recuse yourself, you cannot make a second on the motion as well.
I can.
No,
I
you
am.
can't. You are recusing yourself or not?
No, I'm not recusing myself.
Okay, perfect. We have a motion on the floor. As maker of the motion, you have first discussion.
So I don't normally read from a piece of paper, but this is too important for me to ad lib, and there's too many of you here. When you walk into a local restaurant and recognize parents from the elementary school your college-age son attended, and you get a sassy greeting from the owner who comes out to meet you, you get Woodinville. Or when steering your grocery cart to the checkout line, one of the checkers waves you over by name because he wants to gossip about the changes to the Seahawks roster. You get Woodinville. If you recall a time when you could take a single bus to downtown Seattle any day of the week, you also get Woodinville. I think we all agree that transit improvements are sorely needed in our community. The reality is that these transit improvements are decades away and out of this council's control. The power we do wield is to grow our city in a way that does not make our traffic worse. This is where our focus needs to be, on co-locating businesses near housing to eliminate the need for people to get into their cars. I have no problem with a developer making a profit, but the vision of developers must be in alignment with the vision of our Woodinville community. Rezoning or changing the underlying language of the area to the highest land use means that the power would be taken out of local hands, this council, you the owners, and placed into the hands of banks, insurers, and county tax assessors. Banks set interest rates, insurers control premiums, and the county sets property taxes. Those costs impact the landlords and tenants' bottom line. Woodinville must not abdicate our power as a council to uncontrollable outside forces. The Planning Commission voted not to recommend rezoning this parcel or any part of Old Town. They got Woodinville too. There is only one shot in our lifetimes to get zoning right for Woodinville so that we have the continued pleasure of seeing others at Twisted Cuban, Italianissimo, Chan's, or any of the other unique and quirky businesses that we all know and love here in Woodinville. If we change retail space and remove it entirely, without considerations of the pitfalls that are all sitting in front of us tonight, we will have a precedent that we say yes to anything that a developer asks of us. As a result, those vital hangout spots where we connect with each other become nothing more than a memory of better times. No developer, banker, or tax assessor gets Woodinville. Our community and our neighborhoods get Woodinville, and it is council's job, it's our responsibility to represent our community's needs first. I don't want to risk losing any Old Town businesses or retail space, and that's why I'm voting against this potential code amendment.
Deputy Mayor Randolph.
I just want to get clarity, possibly from Mr. Grumbaugh or the city manager, that the existing developer agreement does allow for the 161 dwelling units that are within the packet. Is that correct?
Yes, the current proposal that is under the development agreement could be up to 161 dwelling units, as well as the additional for commercial.
Okay. Would we be able to connect with the developer to see if we can get clarity on the opportunities for ownership if this was downscaled to I believe, townhouses were being discussed? If that was, where are we in terms of doing that? Is that a possibility?
My understanding is Main Street, if this project was to be constructed, does not plan to hold on to the property and instead would end up selling these units off for home ownership.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Arndt.
Thank you. I agree that we as a council have a responsibility to grow our city in a way that does not make our city worse. And from where I'm sitting, I see the Old Town as a very complicated and unique area of our city. I live just a stone's throw from most of these businesses. It is an area that I frequent and drive through continuously. And I know all of the complications, not only of supporting the small businesses, but of the traffic through there, the lack of infrastructure for pedestrians. And in my opinion, the current development agreement, which is able to be acted upon anytime in the next 5 years, is in fact growing our city in a way that makes it worse. It will make traffic increasingly worse. And even though that property will have commercial in it, it's not going to be the same type of commercial development that is currently in Old Town. So it is feeding into this problem of overdevelopment. And this was approved by the previous council. I do not support the motion on the floor because I do think that we as a city need to hold a public hearing and have a very thorough discussion about the complicated nature of Old Town. It already supports a lot of ground floor residential mixed in among the small businesses that are along the road. But because of the narrowness of those parcels and the fact that this particular parcel that Main Street is asking about faces public roads on 3 sides in a very shallow property, it has some additional complications that I think deserve to be heard by our public. We deserve to give everyone an opportunity to weigh in on this and really consider all of the implications, which I don't believe that the council did previously in 2009 when this current development agreement was approved. And that is why I am not supporting the motion to dismiss this.
So a couple of points that I made earlier. So there is a proposal that was agreed to by council in 2019 for 161 apartment units on this development. That's 7 stories. That there is no building that height. There is no public benefits attached to that development agreement. That kind of height and density in that area. I've lived on the West Ridge for a long time, so I'm very familiar with. In fact, I went to Twisted Cuban before the previous owner was there, and I forgot her name, but I used to take my family there all the time. The infrastructure there is challenging. There's not sufficient sidewalks. The roadways are not up to what they need to be, especially to support 161 apartment units. And the council did pass that in 2019. In fact, Councilmember Best-Campbell voted to approve the apartments, 161 on that property. Our adopted vision of this council and actually state requirements for that we are being required by the state is to address affordable housing. There is a proposal for 40 townhomes. 4 of them will be at affordable rates. Based on memory or looking at the agreement, I think they were building 4 of them at 560 something a square foot, which is significantly lower than stuff that's being built now. And that would be all for ownership. And why I highlight that is that in this state, we have some very onerous, in my opinion, condo liability laws that we cannot get developers very often to build ownership opportunities because the condo liability laws mean that developers can be sued up to 10 years. And so they choose to build apartments because there's such liability with that. So getting ownership opportunities is a focus of ours. It was mentioned that we are not getting transit improvements for decades. I don't believe that's true. King County, we've had several meetings with King County to improve our transit systems. I'm optimistic that at some time in a King County pace that we will get a route, certainly out to the light rail out in Redmond. Everybody here is paying RTA taxes, and we got less bus service. We have discussions coming up that we recognize that the growth and some of the development is an issue for affordability, both in housing, also in commercial properties. So we are going to have a discussion. We directed staff to look into affordable commercial spaces for residents, for businesses, I'm sorry. And immediately, I hear you. I know it's a challenge to be a business owner. I was a business owner myself. This development, if we do it with a development agreement that confines it to this property, it will not have the effect on it, and we won't get a 7-story apartment building. And I would encourage us, if we do take this up, we should have a public hearing, which is required, as I said earlier, and it's why we can't approve this now. We have to have a public hearing. We should do it if we do it. If we do decide to do it, and the public is supportive, and what that looks like, we should do it with a development agreement that confines it to this development here. And we, in my opinion, we should also hold them in the development agreement for some public benefits like affordability and ownership opportunities. So I am not in support of the motion. Councilmember Edwards.
Councilmember Arndt hit most of my points already, so I'll keep it short. I believe we do need to send this to a public hearing. The room is full today. I think someone mentioned they never seen the room this full. I've never seen the room this full. And the people in this room definitely have made their voice heard. But I think we need to do a better job of informing our community and hold that public hearing to get more people involved, engaged in the conversation, and get more input in order to make this big, complex decision, which will have a lasting impact on our community. So that's, for that reason alone, is why I will be voting to a no on this amendment, and I support moving to a public hearing.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. Can we go back to the picture of what was already approved by the formal council? So I also live up on the West Ridge. I go by here multiple times every single day. And thinking about having this built in that area, because this was approved by the former council in 2019, this would fundamentally change that entire area. There is no infrastructure that can support that there, and we don't have the ability to influence it. Bothell owns just past there, and the state owns just past the lights. So there's nothing we can really do to improve this. So I am not in favor of the motion, because I think that we need to thoroughly investigate this, thoroughly educate our community about what was previously already approved that would, I believe, be very detrimental to our community and to our traffic and to our business community, because that is not an Old Town business there. That is basically Wooden Creek, just in a different place. And that can be built anytime between now and the next 5 years. That was previously approved. I can't even imagine trying to get down off the West Ridge into Woodinville now. It can take 15 minutes sometimes as it gets so backed up. You add 160 plus units here, maybe 2.5 people on average per unit. That's a lot of extra cars that are going to be right in that area that already can't support the traffic. This is not good for Woodinville, and we need to have a public hearing in order to really get to the bottom of what are our options with previously poor decisions that were made. Thank you.
Has anybody else want to speak that hasn't spoken at least once yet? Okay, seeing none, Councilmember Best-Campbell.
Well, it's right there on the slide. Unsuccessful in finding a buyer for the project. You bet I voted for this project. You don't want to know why? It's exactly what's allowable in downtown Woodinville. And do you know what else that project is? Not impacting the rest of Old Town the way this new amendment would. That is the Cookhouse Horseshoe North. That is not going to touch the Old Town businesses that you have. This is allowed by code. The only difference is the density that we've allowed there. This is buildable there right now, but you know what that also has is main floor retail. That's the co-location we've been talking about. Having retail available where people live. This monstrosity, give me a break. This is exactly what we allow everywhere else in the CBD. And if this was something that people hated, why have we built what Main Street has 2 blocks away? This is about saving the businesses that we have. This is not going to make a dent in the affordable housing in Woodinville. If you notice the weasel words on the code, it says market rate, not AMI. AMI is area median income. That is a determiner of what percentage below you will pay to rent. Below market rate could be $1 less than $1 million condo or townhome. That doesn't help anybody. But you know what this proposal will do is it'll make sure that a dozen businesses can't even afford to get into affordable housing because you won't have jobs. So yes, you're damn right I voted for that. And I voted for that because we're keeping Woodinville, Woodinville. There is retail, there is social gathering space, and it's a place for people to live. And it's just fear, uncertainty, doubt, and dishonesty to bring this up when we're talking about building luxury townhomes and getting rid of businesses that are going to put you guys out of business. And I think that that is unjust.
I don't know if they will find or they'll build this. I know what the developer in 2019, I think they hit COVID, and then that was a challenge for a developer to build. So I think that affected the 161 apartments. Anybody that works there, lives there, or travels there knows that infrastructure is a challenge there. This is not what we have over Woodinville. This is a 7-story. That is not allowed all over Woodinville. This is a 7-story apartment building in an area that has infrastructure and parking struggles as it is. Every time we talk to developers that own property and we approve a development agreement, what we've done is require public benefits in that development agreement. For example, the one that's about to open up over here at District Flats has a road that they're building. It's the first road that's been on our books for 20 years. It's going to go across the railroad tracks and out over by Little Bear Creek Parkway. So it's a road that'll take a lot of pressure off 175th and under the trestle. We've had other development agreements that required certain climate-friendly building and affordable housing. This development that's allowed right now that they could do tomorrow or sell it to somebody who could build that, it has no public benefits. And I think it's out of proportion. And if you feel that 40 townhomes would affect the next door business as your business or any other business in a negative way, this one will drive up rents more than townhomes will. I do not support the amendment because this is out of proportion. This is not what we should allow around Woodinville. This one has no public benefits attached to it. I will not be supporting the amendment. Anybody else? Anybody up on the screen? Councilmember Arndt.
Thank you. I wanted to comment that a lot of comparisons are being made between this property and what's being built in the CBD. And I just want to highlight the fact that this Old Town area is not our CBD, and it has been deliberately excluded from many of the requirements that are in our CBD. So we've recently passed, a streetscape plan that talks about how many feet of sidewalk and what kind of landscaping and bike lanes that we have to have around developments. And guess what? It didn't include Old Town because Old Town was not part of the CBD where these things applied. And yet having this development, which could go in there, smack dab without any of the requirements that we have for our CBD, is one of the reasons why I think we really need to go to a public hearing, and we need to consider all the implications here, because this is not what is going into the CBD. It's even bigger. And B, Old Town is not the CBD anyway. So I think both of those reasons just go further to show why we need to have a public hearing and properly consider all the implications of this development and what changes we could make to make the entire area less likely to see developments of this sort.
Deputy Mayor Randolph.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard over and over again from the people that were there giving public comment that I am disappointed in is our constituencies seemed like they were not well communicated to when this issue came up. So that's one thing that I definitely want to see improve. Kudos to David and folks that are currently working on making sure that we do a better job with public communication and public engagement. Beyond that, from here forth, we want to do a lot to better affect that. But my vote on this to continue will be focused on continuing a conversation to make sure we do a couple of things. Number one is to better discuss things, because it sounds like even through this discussion, there's some confusion about what's currently in effect, what might go into effect, and what things we can do to consider when it comes to this developer agreement. And I want that laid out with better clarity to our businesses that are in the Old Town area. And I want to make sure that this developer agreement has some teeth in it, where if we're not going to get anything in it that will be supportive and not destroy the businesses that are on that edge of Old Town, then that's not something that we want to move forward with. But in order to get all of these things in arrangement, we should have the discussion and not be afraid of that discussion, and know that when it comes to making any changes to a developer agreement or zoning, that we have to keep in mind that our small businesses are our heartbeat of the city. And we're doing a level of development where if we move a little too fast, we might lose the support of those businesses. And as Mayor Millman has pointed out, and I've pointed out, and I know several on council have, it's important for us to keep those small businesses and figure out how to do things that reflect those small businesses the best. And having a conversation about this, I think, is the best process to go, what's the best thing to do in this situation, and make sure that everyone gets heard.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Evans?
No.
Councilmember Edwards?
No.
Councilmember Best-Campbell?
Yes.
Mayor Millman?
No.
Councilmember Arndt?
No.
Councilmember Taylor?
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Randolph?
No.
Motion fails. Do I have another motion or consideration? Councilmember Arndt.
I move to direct the city manager to set a public hearing for consideration of a proposal to amend section 21.42.040 as presented in the staff report tonight.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Maker of the motion, you have the floor.
I'm not going to add much. I think everything has been said. We need to continue this conversation in a public hearing and do a better job of spreading the word to our community that this is what we're talking about. These are the stakes, and please come and share with us. We want to hear from businesses, from residents in that area, and be able to carefully consider all the angles when we talk about this.
Councilmember Best-Campbell.
So let's be clear about what a public hearing normally is in a city setting. We've already generally decided we would like to move forward with a proposal. A public hearing is an opportunity where instead of 3 minutes, you get 5 minutes to tell you disagree. But council is going to vote the way it's going to vote. And this talk of additional conversation, I have never, ever been in a situation where we have a public hearing in which we reject something that we put to a public hearing. So what you're hearing is, guess what? You're going to have to come back and have the same argument again and have the same answer thrown at you because we're dealing with two separate issues here. They're trying to scare you into saying, you're going to have this monstrosity building next to you. So therefore, we need to allow the townhomes. But here's the kicker. Those townhomes will change the underlying value of the land that your businesses currently sit on. The development agreement with the 161 units doesn't do anything to affect your businesses. Not one thing. It doesn't change the valuation of your land. So we're confusing this issue here, and we have never, ever had a public hearing in which we're supposed to have two, where we have two public hearings where we decide at the end of it, you know what, we listened to the public and we were wrong. It's never happened. Don't fall for it. I don't believe it. I think that you are being duped again. You are being denied the opportunity to be heard. You're all here now, but guess what? There's two more opportunities where you have to take time away from your business to come and tell us what you think. So I think this is a ludicrous idea. Hide behind whatever curtain you want. I know what's underneath it.
Deputy Mayor Randolph. You had the question up? No question?
Oh. The council member had mentioned that we have never gone through a public hearing where we actually reversed what we were doing the public hearing on. I believe we might have done that with the most recent St. Michelle thing that came up for public hearing. I could be absolutely wrong, but if you check the record on that, I believe that we do actually put things forth to a public hearing where we look to hear things from the public and make a turn. And that may be new and different, but that's what's going on here. We want to hear from the public. Thank you.
I disagree with Councilmember Best-Campbell in that if you get the 161 apartments with the retail below market forces under the new retail, those leases will be very high because that's the way new construction works with the retail below. That will put pressure on your lease because the comparable lease next to you will be higher, so it will put pressure. So that what is allowed today, 161 units with the commercial on there, it will actually affect your business. The townhomes have a very small commercial component and will provide you customers that live there and live in the community, and they will not have a lease pressure on your business. We should go to a public hearing because that's what we do. We have a public hearing, and I agree with you that there should have been better notification, and I'll take some responsibility for that. We have a lot going on. It's not an excuse, but I feel bad that there wasn't better notification. I did see your truck that said Woodinville doesn't need more apartments, and I agree with you. What this proposal is okay. 161 apartments is something that I don't think Woodinville needs more of. So I do think we need more discussion on this and go to a public hearing. Councilmember Best-Campbell.
So again, I'm going to go back to We're trying to scare you. 161 units are coming right now down your throat, and the only way we save you is by quietly changing the zoning underneath all of your businesses and telling you it's good for you. If we don't like the development agreement, guess what council can do? We can vote to reject it. We can vote to say, you know what, we would like to rescind it. I haven't heard any of that from this council. They're using it as an excuse and fear. The underlying zoning or the underlying ability to do with your land will change with this proposal. It will. If you don't like the 161 units, guess what? Nobody does, because it's been 5 years sitting on mothballs, and it'll probably sit on mothballs for another 5, at which point it dies. But if we build townhomes, those are here. And all the change of zoning, if we could go back a couple slides and look at what Old Town looks like, it's not just the 5-acre parcel that we're talking about, it's all of the area. It's all of the red. It is not just a portion, just the West Point property. No, no, no. This is discussing the entirety. And again, we're talking about scaring you. Well, it could be 161 units. Sure, it could, but no one's building it. No one has bought that development agreement. Likely no one is going to. That is why Main Street is here asking for an amendment, because that project can't be built under current economic conditions. So what are we talking about? We're talking about scaring you and making you think that it's a false choice. It's not a false choice. It's save what we've got or change it all up and hope it works out in the end. So this conversation is absolutely abhorrent to me. I had to go and tell, at Twisted Cuban, I had to tell Julio, have you heard about this? We have an engagement subcommittee that wraps itself up in meetings. Not one of you thought to send a postcard to these businesses. I went and talked to these businesses. We managed to do it for GB, and yes, that was a comp plan amendment. But for God's sake, this is something so simple. These are humans, these are people. So I went and talked to them. And you can say I filled their minds with lies. I filled their minds with everything that was in that staff report. And it's disgusting to read now, and to hear this complaining about what previous councils have done is cowardice. If you don't want that development agreement, then vote to kill it. If you want to have townhomes, then tell this community you want Old Town to be townhomes. But don't hide behind a public hearing as if somehow it's going to solve every problem here, because it's just going to create more.
One point I want to get clarification on. I don't think we can rescind that development agreement. Would that be correct?
That would be my understanding. The city attorney is here if you want to have him weigh on it, but I don't believe you can.
Yeah, Jeff can certainly jump in there, but I think this would probably, Jeff, you might agree with me, an executive session discussion on the potential litigation if we were to take that type of action.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Thank you. I just want to make that point, is that we don't have the power to rescind the existing development agreement. I think that we do need to do a better job of notification. Since that your property wasn't part of what I was considering, because we can do this with a development agreement and confine the ground floor residential as we've done before just to that development. And any future development agreements would have to come to us with the same proposal, and we would address each one. So I reiterate, I think we should go to a public hearing on this and have further discussion. And I also would like to see, at some point, I would like to see if we do decide to go to any townhomes, the public benefits attached to that, and we need to require them to have affordable units and spell out what that means in that. So. Anybody else who has not spoken twice? Okay, seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Edwards?
Aye.
Councilmember Best-Campbell?
No.
Mayor Millman?
Yes.
Councilmember Arndt?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Randolph?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1-1. Thank you. Okay, next business item will be interviews for the Planning Commission. Mr. Buchanan.
Mr. Mayor, we have a number of a number of candidates for you this evening. You have a interview packet included in your materials this evening. Of course, the interview process is up to council, but typically we've gone through and interviewed one at a time. Council goes through and asks a question each, asks a similar question of each candidate, and then ultimately the council makes a decision, typically by motion, to appoint a member. We do have two positions open this evening, position 200 and 400, if I remember correctly. So we'll be looking for two appointments possibly this evening.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to thank everybody who has volunteered to serve the city in this voluntary but very important Planning Commission appointments. Past practice, what we have done is interviewed one at a time, and everybody else will need to be, that's actually, everybody, let me clarify, anybody else that is applying should be out of the room so they don't have an unfair advantage hearing the questions ahead of time. So if we could clear the room except for our first candidate, and we'll have a series of questions. Each council member has the opportunity to ask one question. It has to be the same question to all of the candidates. So if we could clear the room and have our first candidate.
Mr. Mayor, the list that we have in your packet is just simply by alphabetical order. That's one suggestion. And that first candidate would be Kashif Amin. Kashif Amin, if we're just going alphabetical down the order.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello, and welcome.
I was here last time as well. Good to see you all. It was a really interesting discussion.
You move that closer to you, please. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I do want to quickly comment on that discussion. I think we should take care of our small businesses along with, other requirements that whatever city have. I think small businesses are the core of every community, and, they should be taken care of. So, anyways.
Very much agree. Okay, so we're going to ask you a series of questions, and those will be the same questions that we ask of all, and you've been through this once before. Appreciate you coming back. So let's start with Councilmember Evans.
Great, thank you, and welcome tonight. So my question is, to effectively plan for Woodinville's current and required future changes, we need commissioners who can evaluate the facts, understand how changes to state law impact our codes, and ensure that all codes support City Council approved strategic plans like our climate and our housing action plans. How will you ensure that you understand and fairly apply all applicable laws, codes, and approved growth plans when voting on Planning Commission recommendations?
So I think I work as a manager in a tech company, and I have to basically weigh in on projects, what project should we do based on the, the ROI for that project, and how will it impact my team, how the team can grow, right? So I have some experience on that side, right? I do that, that's my daily job anyways, right? In the city.
I'm sorry, can you move the mic just a little closer, please?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I think I should.
I'm sorry, there, much better. Thank you.
I want to make sure that I don't, eat it. So, I think that's my daily job anyways, right? The other thing is that, listening to everything right now as well, right? I think codes, requirements, laws are on one side, and how those things are going to impact the city itself, the city, the life of the city, or the soul of the city, and the people as well. We should consider all of those things and combine the long-term benefits which are good for the city, right, rather than the short-term benefits, right? So I think it's all have to be together. We can't basically focus on one thing alone and just make decisions on that, right? And the Planning Commission's job should be to take into consideration everything that needs to be considered for that, right? Not just one particular thing. So, and I think that's the main thing that we should all consider.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in the Woodinville community and why you would be a good planning commissioner?
Yeah, so as you might remember last time, I think I have been working as I'm the president of our HOA community in Woodinville City, right? I've been doing that job for like almost four years, a little bit more than 4 years. And I've been like working with my community a lot to basically, listen to them, what their what their needs are. And I've actually dealt with the city multiple times as well. When the developer transferred over the HOA to us, they didn't follow through with some of the projects actually, right? The city lights, they were not transferred over. We were still paying for that, but the city should have been paying for that. So I did work with the city quite a lot for that and some other things as well to make sure that, I can help the community for that, right? The second thing I think I would say is that I've also worked with the North Shore School District as well. I was part of the tech planning committee for the North Shore School District, where we had to basically figure out how do we help the kids during the pandemic to make sure that they can work effectively and learn, based on whatever needs that they have. And also, the people who have to support their kids during that time, how do they get help, right? Especially the people who, who have to work and support their kids as well, right? How do we basically help, in their situation as well, right? And also, I think, I've been trying to figure out how I can help the community as well, right? And this is one of the other things as well that I'm trying to basically extend, my efforts to see how I can help the community a little bit more, I guess, right? Yeah, that's the main thing.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Randolph.
Hey there, Mr. Amin. Good to see you again.
Sure.
The Washington Growth Management Act has objectives to control urban sprawl, protect natural resources, and ensure coordinated planning for growth. In its effect to do these actions, it creates requirements that put pressure on our planning commissioners to make long-term, forward-looking considerations. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, are you familiar with the GMA, and how do you feel it will most affect your duties as a council-appointed planning commissioner?
Right. So I'll be honest, I do not know about that, but what I can tell you is that, I think I was looking at some of the other cities, how they support their residents, especially the small businesses. I think the foot traffic that is the key for any city's center, right? The small businesses, right? I know some cities do help these small businesses in their areas to make sure that they can thrive, which in turn increases the foot traffic, and that foot traffic increases the business, which returns taxes, which are then basically used by the city government to basically, run themselves, right? So, and I know for a fact in one big city, they actually have been supporting the small businesses, giving them money to facelift their fronts so that increases their, appeal, curb appeal, so that there is more foot traffic, people come there, they, hang out, businesses thrive because of that, right? So it always has to be a mix of, again, as I said, taking care of the local businesses, small businesses, not the big businesses, and also the long-term plans that are there that, it has to be a balance. I don't think we can, as I said at the very start, right, we can take just one thing into account and make our decisions based on that, right? The long-term decisions have to be basically, all those things should be considered and make plans based on that.
Thank you.
My question is, and bear with me, it's a little long. I have a statement and then a question. Woodinville has met our state-mandated GMA housing targets, but not our affordable housing targets. The state is requiring us to submit a plan by the end of the year to meet our affordable housing targets, and that's by 2044. We have three options put forth to us to meet those, that mandate. The first one is to add density to our residential neighborhoods. The second one is to identify a partner to build many, I don't know the number, 8-story high-rises or mid-rises in downtown. The third is to rezone the GB. Which one do you prefer and why?
So if you remember from last time, I said, like, I think Woodinville is growing, right? I don't think anyone can deny that, right? Like, it is going to grow, right? It's the job of the city council and to some extent planning commission to make sure that, there are right things in place to make sure that some of the long-term targets are met and we are taking care of the local businesses and, the small businesses as well, right? If it is like, and generally what I've seen in every place is that, the city centers are the places where the small businesses thrive and there are like multifamily housing as well, right? So anywhere where we can mix both of those things, I think that'll be the ideal situation. The suburbs, I know Woodinville is more of a, countryside where people like to basically have, and I don't think like, that is something that we need to change, right? It's a mix of both, right? Like, the city centers everywhere generally are conducive to small businesses and businesses growth, and the multi-family housing where, you can build like affordable houses with developer contracts and other stuff as well. But we have to make sure that, nobody is stepped on by any of those things as well, right? So,
thank you. Councilmember Best-Campbell.
Thank you. I know it's nerve-wracking sitting there. It feels like you're talking to a parole board. You're doing a good job. We normally have water there, but apparently
I was feeling like, I think it's good to hear people. I think that's what we are all here for, I guess, right? So.
The Planning Commission serves as a deliberative body separate from the City Council. The aim is to encourage robust discussions of all potential outcomes on any given topic. Please provide 1 or 2 examples of action in the past 2 years this council has taken that you disagree with.
So I think just now, like that is one of those things. I think we should take care of the small businesses. I think I haven't, like the main things that I've learned about so far are from this hearing, right? And I plan to attend the public hearing whenever this happens, because this is something that I need to make sure. I'm a resident of Woodinville as well, right? Like I need to be abreast of that detail as well, right? Whatever comes out of this interview, I'm not like worried about that. But I think that is an important issue that we should all discuss about. And again, I'm repeating this same thing. I said that last time as well, right? Foot traffic, small businesses, they need to be taken care of, right? But on the other hand also, right, like, I think the affordable housing is an important thing as well. Woodinville is becoming out of range for a lot of people, even for the people who are living here as well, right? We need to take care of the affordable housing as well, right? That is an important part of it as well. I don't think we should overly focus on, one thing at a time. It has to be both of those things. Again, small businesses and affordable housing, both are important. Both should be considered, right? I don't think it's like, keep both sides in the mind.
Thank you.
Councilmember Arndt.
Thank you so much for coming to interview tonight. I'm going to yield my question in order for this to proceed more quickly this evening.
Councilmember Taylor.
Good evening. Thank you for your application to the Planning Commission. I'd like to ask a quick question. Are you a registered voter in Woodinville?
Okay. I don't know if that is a fair question, but I can tell you that I am a registered voter in Woodinville, yes, and I've already voted as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
you get one question, Councilmember Taylor.
well, it's first is if you're a registered
Councilmember
voter,
Taylor, you get one question.
The second part of that, if so, Did you vote?
Mr.
in
Ganson?
election?
I don't think, okay, anyways, I can answer that.
Yeah, yeah, because if it's no, then we don't
Okay,
proceed.
sure.
So,
Go ahead.
all right,
That's, the same rules should apply to all council members. You get one question.
it's one
And
question.
it's the same question to everybody. So if somebody answers differently, you're going to ask another question that's going to be different?
If it's no, I'm going to stop.
You get one question per our rules. Mr. Ganson? These are civil service rules. Would you care to weigh in on that, please?
Other councils decided how to approach these interviews. Mayor Millman, you as chair of the council have the prerogative to make that ruling.
Okay. Everybody gets one question and one question only. That's the way we've done it all the time. There's no follow-up questions. It's one question. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you volunteering, and this is for your second time, so I appreciate that.
Sure. I'm persistent.
That's a good quality.
I want to help. So, thank you.
Hello and welcome. Please state your name. We have a series of questions for you. Everybody gets to ask you one question, and it's the same question that we've asked all of the other candidates. So please state your name, and then we'll get started.
Thank you. My name is Anthony. I have been a Woodinville resident since 2020. I am an engineer by trade, work in aerospace, and that's on the civilian side. And I'm also an Army Reserve officer. I am an engineer officer.
Thank you. First question, Councilmember Evans.
Great, thank you, and welcome this evening. To effectively plan for Woodinville's current and required future changes, we need commissioners who can evaluate the facts, understand how changes to state law impact our codes, and ensure all codes support City Council-approved strategic plans like our climate and housing action plans. How will you ensure that you understand and fairly apply all applicable laws, codes, and approved plans when voting on Planning Commission recommendations?
Thank you for the question. I think to get started, we, as new commissioners, there is a lot of homework to do. Number one is to get familiar with the applicable regulation locally, starting with Chapter 21 of the City Code, the Unified Development Code. And also, I can use my peers on the committee to get more information and additional resources such as the city manager. I think that's another good source. But more importantly, we need to make the effort to look into what information is needed and what is applicable and what is not. If anything is not